Hi, room 23. Okay, today we're going to talk about the Boston Tea Party. So remember last week we read chapter 1 on the 13 colonies. We discussed why the colonists were angry with King George, right? And why King George placed all these taxes. Now remember, King George fought a very expensive war against the French. So now he needed to pay back all the money that he loaned to fund that war. Okay, so go to page 7 of your book, chapter 2, the Boston Tea Party. Now, the people were very, very upset. Okay, we'll follow along as I read chapter 2. Many people in the 13 colonies in America drank tea. Though tea was not cheap, people liked it so much they saved up to buy it. That was until the British Parliament and King George placed a tax on it. Then the colonists said that they would stop drinking British tea. Remember the word British Parliament. Remember the group of people that made the laws with King George. And we also talked last week about what a tax is. Okay, a tax is extra money put on something. When you buy it, you have to pay a little bit more. Okay, let's turn the page and I will scroll down. British ships bringing tea to the colonies were turned away. Then on a cold winter day, the governor in Boston allowed 3 British ships carrying tea to sail into the Boston harbor. That night, a group of men who were dressed like Native Americans climbed onto the ships. They threw the tea into the water. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. So Boston Tea Party was not a bunch of people having a great time drinking tea like you would think would be at a party, right? What happened was, if you look in the background behind me, look at my background. Woo, pretty cool, right? Where if you see my face, this is actually what Boston Harbor looks like today, and I'll scoot over. That's Boston Harbor today. Doesn't look like what Boston Harbor looked like back during the Boston Tea Party, okay? Now, the colonists like to drink tea. What was really strange is when they decided not to purchase any more tea, the other colonies decided that no ships bringing tea would be able to dock at any of their ports. So all the other colonies agreed that we weren't going to have any ships come in. But the thing is, in Boston, the governor actually allowed 3 British ships carrying tea to sail into Boston Harbor. And that kind of made the colonists really upset, okay? The colonists felt that they should all stick together. So a group of men that night, they dressed up like Native Americans. Actually, they dressed up like Mohawk Indians. And then they secretly boarded the ship and they threw all the tea. They busted open all the boxes and threw the tea into the water. Okay, now dressing up like an Indian during this time period meant that they were trying to show freedom. Okay, it wasn't because they were thinking, oh, Indians would totally go onto a ship and do that. No, dressing like a Native American was actually a sign of freedom. So, and plus, it could be that they were disguising themselves, right? They didn't want people to know who they were that was doing this in the middle of the night. Now, news of what happened in Boston spread soon. Soon, many people in the colonies were celebrating the Boston Tea Party. However, when the news reached King George and Parliament, they became very angry. They sent British warships to close Boston Harbor. With the harbor closed, no food or supplies could get in. So if you look at this picture in your book of the harbor versus the one in my background, you're going to notice that the Boston Harbor, it is an area surrounded by buildings, right? The land is very, very close to the water. So once they brought their ships in to block the harbor in, no other ships and supplies could get in. Okay. Now, other colonists were really happy that, those men dressed up and dumped all the tea into the harbor. But now, guess what? The colonists that live in Boston, they're not going to get any access to food or supplies. Okay. So King George was not happy. King George was definitely not a happy king. To show their support for the people of Boston, colonists across the 13 colonies sent food and clothes. The British sent more British soldiers to keep order. So, on one hand, the other colonies were very happy and they sent food and supplies to Boston, but then King George sent more British soldiers. So look at this picture. You'll see British soldiers here, and you're going to hear a term in history coming up throughout this unit. They're called redcoats, okay? And then the reason why the British soldiers were called redcoats, their nickname is because guess what? Their uniforms were red and they stood out. Okay, so they brought the soldiers in. King George sent soldiers, okay, to keep order. All right, let's keep going. The colonists called the British soldiers were redcoats because of the bright red uniforms. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Oop, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, so when you end on page 10, okay, you're going to go, if you haven't done so already, you're going to go and watch a Liberty Kids episode about the Boston Tea Party. All right, okay, you guys, I will talk to you later and we'll move on to chapter 3.